Well, welcome and hello everybody. This is a different sort of event because we're not here to basically sort of quote unquote recruit or sell or position in one firm. What we're basically here to inform you about and hopefully help you think about is the industry of consulting. And obviously there's a lot of firms in that. Everybody sort of knows the word consulting. Very few people know what it is. My own kids don't know what I do. I fly a lot in planes, so when they're really young, they thought I was a pilot, which was sort of cool. Then they see me working on PowerPoint presentations, so now they think I'm an artist, which is even cooler. And my older kids now actually, sort of get that I actually help companies be more successful, make more money, etc., etc. So today, what we're trying to do is give you an introduction to basically what consulting is. For some, this might be remedial, for some it might be new use. We'll try to get the right balance. We've got a great panel here that was basically constructed not to be sort of 5 people and we're like 1 year out of school, but we've got old guys like Kevin and myself, less old guys like Geoff, some young guys, and Gary in the middle. And so the whole point is that you'll get a sense of different firms and different experiences in those firms as we go through. So when I was asked to do this, November 2nd, 2016 sounded like a great, nothing on my calendar. And then, it suddenly became not a great day to do this. And so I'm glad it starts at 6, ends at 8. I think the first pitch is at 8:08, so I should be able to get to where I need to get to for at least the second inning. But in all seriousness, I'm happy to be here, and this has probably been a conversation that's been actually several years in the making, but came to fruition a couple of months ago. So without further ado, let me talk about myself, and then I'll have the panel introduce themselves. So, class of '87, you may detect a little bit of an accent. I originally am from Belfast, Northern Ireland. I came over to run track at Villanova. Graduated '87, had no clue what I wanted to do, so I just kept running for a couple of years and played around in different things. Had 1 or 2 real jobs at Wharton Econometrics. Decided to go to business school at University of Chicago. Ended up in consulting. Started off joining a group at the time that was inside McKinsey that left for A.T. Kearney. A couple of mergers happened. I left A.T. Kearney, founded a boutique consulting firm for about 8-9 years, and left that and came to Bain about a dozen years ago or so. So 23, 24 years in consulting in different forms. This is the final chapter of my consulting career, and I'm not intending to go anywhere else. And so hopefully we'll be able to impart some of that experience. Geoff, do you want to start and introduce yourself?
Happy to. Thanks, Sean. I'm Geoff Morrell. I graduated from Villanova in 2005. I studied computer science here. After I graduated, I went to work at Microsoft for 5 years. Lived in Seattle. I worked on the team building the Windows operating system, and then I worked on mobile strategy at MSNBC. So we built a series of iPhone apps for shows like The Today Show and Meet the Press. I went to business school at Columbia in 2010, and I joined McKinsey in 2012. So I'm an engagement manager at McKinsey. I live in New York. I work in service to the pharmaceutical and medical device industries, and on matters related to technology and how digital impacts the strategies of these types of companies.
My name is James D'Amato. I graduated in 2015, majored in finance and international business. I co-founded BCG with Greg Design. Just couldn't be happier to see where it's come. This is an awesome turnout, so thanks so much for coming. Right now I work at Deloitte Consulting. I am on internal engagement within Deloitte, helping to build a staffing solution for all of Deloitte Consulting.
Kevin O'Connor, I'm with Booz Allen Hamilton. I graduated from Villanova in 1990 as an electrical engineer. Decided that was actually really hard. So went into the business school at University of Maryland, got my MBA. That led me through a couple of jobs and ultimately Booz Allen 18 years ago. I lead a software development practice within Booz Allen, focused on public sector, federal government clients. I've enjoyed that for 18 years.
everyone. Gary Aiello, Villanova 08. I did finance and econ undergrad and went to Merrill Lynch to work in investment banking for 4 years afterwards, left as an associate. Talk about reasons why after, but really enjoyed my time there, but went to business school to sort of switch up careers. Went to Dartmouth, tech school of business, and then consulting sounded really awesome. Didn't know what it was in undergrad, but in business school, lots of folks are interested in it, so sort of made a career transition. Been at Bain for the last 2.5 years in Chicago. We're generalists, so I've worked in industries, retail, private equity, industrials, e-commerce, sort of range the gamut across the country. So I'm a case team leader.
Hi everyone, my name is Kathleen Barr. I'm at FTI Consulting. I graduated from Villanova in 2014 with a major in biology and a minor in business from SBI actually. I've been at FTI for my 2 years since, and I work on the healthcare operations side. So although FTI covers many different industries, I'm focused mainly with hospital systems.
Great. So what we're going to try and do tonight is anchor this around sort of 4 questions. One is what is management consulting, or what is consulting? Second is what do you actually do as a consultant? We're not pilots or artists. We'll try and impart what we actually try to do. Why should you start a career in consulting? Very few people get into this business thinking that they're going to be a consultant for life. Some people like myself and Kevin seem to have stuck it out for a long time, but it's usually not the intent that I'm going to be a consultant forever. It's often a launching pad, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then lastly, what can you do to prepare? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically talk through a couple of pages, and then I'm going to basically ask the panelists certain questions. They'll talk. This is not set up to be sort of all Q&A, but if anybody in the audience has any particular question, just lob it in, and we'll try our best to answer it, and we'll keep it fairly fluid. So, a simple framing of the consulting market, and this is a very hard thing to do because basically consulting firms are combining with each other. Firms that used to be sort of purely strategy firms now have deep technology expertise. Firms that used to be mostly technology have strategy expertise. But if you think about sort of disciplines that sort of reside inside consulting firms, clearly there's strategy, there's functional specialists, so firms that might look at, say, Salesforce, technology and BPO firms, and then clearly the accounting firms that all have consulting divisions and advisory divisions. So, like in the old days, you used to be able to put firms against all of these. Today, it's basically just a little bit of a random walk. I think you can pick any firm on this and sort of say, yeah, but they do technology, or they do strategy, or they do whatever. And so that's just the reality. And obviously, you're seeing mergers in the business, like Deloitte buying Monitor, PwC buying strategy and so this is a fluid and dynamic environment. The difference probably about the consulting environment is, if you think about the investment banking environment, most investment banks generally do the same thing. Big investment banks all do the same, medium-sized investment banks all do the same. Consulting firms tend to be a little bit more bespoke, a little bit more customized. Some are very narrow, some are very broad. So it's a little bit more eclectic in terms of you can't sort of just compare 2 firms and say they're exactly do the same. So another way of thinking about this is well, what do we actually do, or what questions? We basically help businesses address key strategic questions, and that could be things like how do you design and execute a better digital strategy? How do you improve profitability? Have just merged. How do you make sure that you've got the benefits of that? Should we divest or try to fix a struggling division? These are sort of the exam questions that executives pose to us, and we then figure out ways to solve those. We also address org and ops questions, and those would be things like I need to redesign our organization to be more effective or more efficient. How do you select and maybe implement a new software package to run your business? That could be a supply chain package, an ERP package. Could be a staffing package. How do you improve productivity or sales force? That could be a very finite question. And then how do you streamline something like supply chain to drive profitability? So the reality is there's as many questions that we solve as you can think about questions. And so, maybe Geoff, do you want to take a moment and just like spend a couple of minutes on something you've been working on?
Yeah, so let's pick one example. Thanks, Sean. So I was in a situation where we were working with a client, and here let's talk about a person, not a company. So this is a person inside of a company. He is the head of a digital unit of a pharma company. And he had been hearing from folks that building cognitive behavioral therapy using software would be big, would be a big opportunity. Cognitive behavioral therapy is talk therapy designed at addressing things like depression. He believed that building software to do that would be big, but he had absolutely no idea whether, in fact, his hypothesis was true. It turns out that it's actually very hard to value a market that doesn't actually exist. So he said to McKinsey, can you tell us, is this an opportunity? How large would the opportunity be? What are the things that we need to do as an organization to capture and capitalize on that opportunity? And so I led a team of 3 other consultants to answer that question in about 2 weeks. We produced a piece of material that we thought answered the question and put it in language that he, as the leader of his business, could understand based on sort of how he makes decisions, what he cares about, etc. So not only did we answer the question, but we also spun the story, we also built the story in a way that our client could understand it.
And that's a great example of like if the questions we were asked to answer were easy, they wouldn't pay us to answer them, quite frankly. So the questions tend to be fairly nebulous. Oftentimes there's always a piece of it that, well, it's a market that doesn't really exist, so I've got to triangulate and figure out how to size it. I've got to think about reference points that might be analogs. So the thought process of how you basically sort of take a nebulous question like that and get to an answer is part of what we do. Sometimes our questions can be very finite. They can be like, we have a sales force, the bottom 50% are not performing as good as the top 50%, and you go and you figure out a way how to solve that problem. It's very bounded, but some problems, like Geoff was alluding to, are quite complicated, quite nuanced. It's not like there's an easy answer, and therefore you've got to figure out a thought process. And that thought process, as we said, you don't learn some of it. You learn some of those things in business school. You learn some of those things as an engineer. You learn some of those things as a computer scientist. It's what we look for is a way to think, and we teach you a way to think versus you just go and take a canned answer off the shelf. Kevin, do you want to talk about something in your world?
Yeah. So actually, I do more on the federal government side. So the types of problems we solve are, the problems that the nation is dealing with in a lot of cases.
You want to solve this election?
Well,
the debates? Are you solving that? You're not doing a really good job.
We're going to have a new moderator next time.
Okay.
But if you think back several years ago, Hurricane Katrina, the government learned a lot about how they communicate with citizens during a disaster like that. And what they learned is that they really didn't have a way to do it. So we got involved. We had actually been working with a group of folks consolidating federal benefits into a single mobile platform. How do you actually, as a citizen, how do you access your benefits? And we built out this platform called benefits.gov. Well, the thought was we could take that, extend it into disaster assistance, and allow people who had gone through a traumatic event like a hurricane, a flood, those types of things, to access assistance for where they are and actually connect so that people knew they were safe. So we extended that platform, worked with the government to develop communications and how we were going to do that with FEMA. So that's something we're very proud of, that we helped solve a problem like that, big problem, and it's been used over and over and over again for different hurricanes and floods. So really,
And I'm assuming that took longer than 2 weeks.
took a little
for
longer,
Jeff, right? Or
actually,
3 weeks, was it?
I would
Or
say most of the federal consulting does take longer because there is a lot of politics in terms of getting everybody to move in the same direction. But when you get them there, it's pretty satisfying.
so a couple of things. We talked about something that's nebulous, and you got to sort of think about how to answer it. You think about moving governments and institutions, the change management associated with that, moving large bodies of people who may not be motivated to move the way that you want to move, enabling that with technology or not. These are, that's sort of maybe two two bookends of the types of work that we do, and probably the length, that's a short project in consulting, that Geoff alluded to. I'm assuming that was a very long project in consulting, and we have probably everything in between. There's not really any such thing as an average project. I think it's very hard for us to sort of say an average project, but the way I tend to think of projects in our business is, not necessarily, there's questions that we answer in a period of time. They may be nested inside bigger projects that last, for months or years or, multi-years, but we tend to answer questions, sometimes very fast in a couple of weeks, but in that sort of 3-month time frame is a sort of bounded, that's big enough that, and hard enough that you can get enough work done to answer the questions, and often those get strung together into a big project, but that's, there's no such thing as average in this business, unfortunately. The other thing that drives our business and amplifies some of the questions is just what's going on in the world. So you think about macro trends and global trends. So changing customer preferences. 7/24/365. Consumer demand from emerging economies. Technology disruption, whether that's driverless cars or autonomous vehicles or Internet of Things, and every industry in the world is being disrupted in some shape or form. Regulatory things like political shifts like Brexit. I have a whole bunch of clients who are trying to figure out, should we continue to hire people and put people in the United Kingdom, or would Ireland be a better place, or Frankfurt, or how do we think about that? So these are big sort of trends that actually cause businesses to think about what they're doing, and then we come in basically, and we often have knowledge of these things as backdrop, and we nest projects in them. But it's this is a global business that's basically impacted by lots of different things. Some of it's very finite with projects, some of it's very macro, like the geopolitical shifts. So that probably doesn't answer anything. It sort of says like, oh yeah, this consulting, we do these sort of really hard things like in a really fast time, governments and lots of things. So what I thought we'd do now is like, what do you really do as a consultant as an individual? So not necessarily what about the firm, or not so much about the problem. What do you actually do day to day in this business? And again, we've got a panel that probably the role of entry-level consultants changes a little bit. We'll be guilty of calling people different names. At Bain, we call entry-level consultants associate consultants at McKinsey as business analysts, or used to be. At Deloitte,
Business technology.
Business tech,
Business analyst.
So FTI probably is a different name. Consultant, yeah. So we will use lots of names interchangeably just to confuse you, because that's what we tend to do. But we will call, we will spend time talking about what you do as a consultant, and we're trying to frame this as what do you do coming out of undergrad, and we'll talk a little bit about the differences when you come out of business school. So, associate consultants or business analysts or business technology analysts, three simple things at the risk of oversimplifying. One is, you're involved in helping come up with the answer. So this is a business where the entry-level consultant is part of the team and is an integral part of the team. It's not in most firms, they're not sitting off just as a research arm that sits there and feeds information to a group of people. We tend to, and every firm's a little different, but we tend to have a team, and in that team it's made up of a partner and a manager and some post-MBA consultants and some pre-MBA consultants. And those teams can be of various sizes depending on the problem, but basically we are looking for people as an industry that are ready to come into a consulting environment, a consulting team, sooner rather than later be client-facing, own parts of the problem, and work in that collaborative team environment. So coming up with the answer is a part of it, advising the client, and working closely within the team. So that still probably doesn't tell you, well, what do I really do? So this may help a little bit, and then I'll pivot over to the panel. So take a typical week, 9 to 9, I don't know, maybe 8 to 8, 7 to 7, pick your, 9 to midnight. I was struggling with what to put in this axis, so I just put a 12-hour block. But basically, part of your work is about cracking the problem. And so that could be, you're doing a customer survey, you're gathering the customer data, you're starting to put that into slides, you're revising that with your team, but your job could be, I'm running a survey, and you're collecting that information, you're codifying it, you're figuring out how to disseminate it, what does it actually mean. That's all part of cracking the problem. There's a piece of this then is meeting with the client, which is like, how do you basically think about, maybe talk to the client about the qualitative process, the research process that you've undertaken. These things called client pre-wires are by talking to clients before the big meeting, giving them, potentially some of the major messages, validating some of the data with them, and then, often it culminates in some sort of client event. It might be weekly or monthly, but basically that's a mechanism to start, communicating back like what we're finding, part of cracking the problem. And then there's a whole bunch of, discussing that with your team. And so, again, no such thing as a typical or average, but if you break down sort of the bodies of work, part of it's problem solving, part of it's basically client interface, and part of it is with your team. And so you'll always, you try to own a piece of the problem. That problem is owned by the team. Other consultants own different parts of it to come together. You triangulate your work. And so that's sort of like what a week would look like. But maybe James, you want to talk about a week in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sean. So I'm in technology consulting with Deloitte, which is slightly different, but it really pairs off a lot of what Sean has been talking about in terms of tracking the problem, meeting with the client, and discussing those results you get from the team. So in technology consulting, it's much more about the implementation of the solution that you're delivering. So it's meeting with the client, getting familiar with what their requirements are in terms of what they're looking for from their solution. So what business problem are they trying to solve by using technology? From there, we actually go in and build the solution, whether it be configuring a large ERP system like SAP or Oracle, or even developing a customized solution, which Deloitte does as well. And then from there, testing the solution to make sure it's appropriate for exactly how the client wanted, and then ultimately launching it. Working with them to make sure their support structure is up to speed, and make sure that their organization as well is ready for that change that's coming. So my day-to-day is very much involved with first meeting with the client, getting familiar with the configuration items that we're discussing, and then throughout the day configuring, constantly touching base with the client, making sure we're meeting their specifications, and then later in the day providing status to my team lead. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Kathleen?
Sure. So every day is very different. I'd say a lot of my days revolve around data analysis and deliverable preparation. Like as Sean was saying, consultants really do play a crucial role on a team. And I was surprised by the amount of responsibility I was given from the start. I can use an example. We were working with a hospital in New York, and this was my first hospital operations project, so very new. I thought I would go in, shadow a little, help with the data, but no, I was given a full piece of the engagement to review the physician assistant staffing schedule against census. So I went in and had tried to work one-on-one with the head PA, understand why do you staff this way, areas where we could maybe cut back or use residents rather than PAs because they're less expensive, and try and save money at the end of the day for their staffing. And then at the end of that, I ended up presenting directly to the president, the CFO, the CNO, so it's a lot of responsibility, but it was a great learning experience in that sense. So although a lot of it is data analysis and preparing PowerPoints and deliverables, you do get a lot of responsibility. So it's a great experience.
Kelly, do you want to compare and contrast a little bit, just think back to sort of coming out of business school, graduate business school, and then sort of the role of a consultant, which you'll find is not that different, obviously, sometimes from the role of an undergrad. So, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so coming out of business school versus coming out of undergrad, the way Bain works is fairly flat, right? So you're going to have some quantitative data analysis. You're also going to have some qualitative interactions with the client. So you do a lot of the same things. It's similar to banking, right? Or if you're an analyst and you're associated. So very similar. But as you progress after business school, you're given control over a piece of the canvas, a whole piece of the canvas. So from being an individual contributor, figuring out, for example, on a post-merger integration, how do I get marketing, IT, and legal to function properly, to now forming the answer for a private equity firm who bought a $4 billion company, and they need to figure out what to keep and what to sell. It's the progression of responsibility gets up there pretty quickly. And so now I have 3 people underneath me trying to figure out the quant side, how fast the market's going to grow, so I have to direct that person. How to figure out how the customers are going to react, so I have to direct that person. And finally figuring out what this all means for the fund, there's a person underneath that. So it goes from being tactical and actually doing the analysis to directing the team and having control over the deliverable they can make.
That's a good point, and maybe Geoff, you're an engagement manager, so that the one thing about this business is it's sort of like business on steroids. The problem solving, you're seeing problems at a greater frequency than you would, in maybe a normal, working for a big, large company. You're also starting to manage people probably sooner. Do you want to talk about, just your couple of years post MBA?
Well, so yeah, absolutely. At first bite is sort of say, confirming the point about not much distinction between what you do on a day-to-day basis when you join after undergrad versus joining after business school. I think these firms are very much about, all of our firms are very much about figuring out what your strengths are, giving you opportunities to really excel at those strengths, and then developing you in the areas where you feel like you need to grow. And that's something that you can do right after undergrad. It's something you can do right after business school. I also want to reflect on the point about the responsibilities that someone who just joined the firm has, be they an undergrad or an associate. We as a team, we need every ounce of your thinking and your perspective to get us to the right answer. So Alex, who introduced himself and is in part of the networking discussion, and who's on my team, he graduated in the spring of last year. He has his own 2 or 3 person client team that he leads to a goal and to an outcome. And I almost never talk to any of those clients at all. Alex talks to them by himself, and he's responsible for delivering a part of our project. We talk at McKinsey about something called the obligation to dissent. Sort of that as a member of the team, if you think something that is happening is not the right answer for the client, it's not simply that you dissenting is respected, you have an obligation to do it. So when I say to Alex, I think we should do ABCD with your client team, I need him to say back to me, John on this client team totally disagrees with B, and we need to come up with a different answer. And if I didn't have that perspective, we wouldn't get to the best answer as we could. So.
The other thing, and in this, and I think everybody will agree with this, is that we are an industry that, we're a human capital industry. The only thing we have is our people. We don't really make that much. We basically have people that we manage to try to be, to be great at what you do. And so we are world class at, as an industry, in reviewing and upward feedback and downward feedback and sideways feedback and more feedback than you can ever imagine. But it's a great, that is a huge part of the learning in this business of just, you sit down, and, different, we have our, you have your obligation of dissent, we have, True North. It's how do you have, real candid conversations about your performance, what you're doing well, what you're not doing well, how do you get better. That's, there's a formal piece of that, there's an informal piece of that. It happens nearly every day in some shape or form, or at least every week, of some, form of feedback. And so this is a career, again, like you can go into a large Fortune 500 company and get like one review once a year, and that is sort of more of a, you're doing a great job, see you next year. And we are, as an industry, nearly the extreme of that. We're always looking at our talent. We're always trying to sort of round out our talent. We're always, as Geoff said, we're always trying to sort of figure out which pieces of you need to develop faster than other. Everybody comes into this business with, spikes. You're either off the charts analytically and quantitatively, and you maybe need to sort of, boost your your communication skills, or your client skills, or your logic skills, or your simplification skills, or you might come into this business as a great communicator and not as strong a logical thinker. And so we're always looking for which piece of you we need to make better, and with the recognition that everybody doesn't come in the same. And our whole human resource processes are geared to sort of like filling out those gaps, rounding out the people, and moving you from that entry-level job to being able to manage a couple of team members, and then you're managing team members. In a year you'll be managing McKinsey people and moves, and that's like the whole business sort of operates on a little bit like steroids, and so the experience you will get in sort of 2 to 3 years inside a consulting environment tends to be probably 5 or 6 years of regular work experience. And it's not all just time. It's really the focus of how much we invest in people, because at the end of the day, that's really all we have. But we also have fun. So that seems like that's like really hard, and I thought I was going to have to lock the doors there because you were like, not sure I want any part of that. But we work in teams and we have fun. And so this is just a few things, like at Bain and at every firm across this table, they've got their own versions of this. You work in a team. The team, basically sort of travels together, goes to the client together, eats meals together. That can be often out of town. But we respect everybody's individuality, so it's not not a forced march. In Bain, every office in Bain is a Bain band. There's a bunch of bands in other consulting firms. That seems to be a common theme. We have the Bain World Cup, which is every office in Bain is a soccer team. The interesting thing about the Bain World Cup was it was actually organized by undergraduate consultants, 25 years ago, and now it basically is it's a multi-office thing. So every firm has some version of this, and so it's a work hard environment. It's an invest in people, but it's also recognizing how to sort of celebrate and have fun. And I think that would be common across all the firms. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. So, probably the most important question for people in this room is like, why should you start your career in consulting? Why is this a good career to sort of in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, wherever you are in your academic life, think, okay, I'm going to do this as my first job. And so a couple of thoughts on that, and then we'll talk across the panel again. So let me just very simply articulate a consulting career. So a consulting career, we've been talking a little bit about the undergrad world. You come in, whether you're called an associate or an analyst or an AC or whatever, there's usually a brand new AC, and then there's a senior AC, and there's usually a business analyst and a senior business analyst. But basically, there's a little bit of maturing in that 2 to 3 years, and a lot of firms sort of look at this as a sort of more like a 3-year sort of thing, and then you decide, potentially to go to business school. And there's sort of 2 paths inside most consulting firms. One is you can try to stay, and that's a bucket called direct promotion, where you just sort of stay there and keep going through the firm. Or in some cases, we send a lot of people to business school. In many of the firms, we will actually pay for you to go to business school, support you getting into business school, and then you come back from business school and your career sort of, you start being a consultant, and then you're a manager, and then you're ultimately a partner, and so that would be like, if you were to stay in consulting, that's generally the timeline and the different steps. But if I was sitting in your shoes, I guess here's what I'd be thinking. One is, think about both an industry and a firm where you can have a meaningful impact. And what do I mean by that? It means exactly the stuff that we were just talking, that you're less than 1 year out of school and you're running a 3-person client team, or you're owning a big piece of the healthcare project, or you're working, you have an impact so that you're actually sort of in the game versus sort of watching the game. And I think our industry generally is a place where you can have a meaningful impact very, very early in your career. Like I've had people that are 2 years out of undergrad running, 10 people, client teams on post-merger engagements, and these are big. You've got 23-year-old people, interfacing. I guarantee you, every client that you're interfacing is a little older than you. Maybe as old as your father. And so, that's a great skill to have, and that's a great way to have a meaningful impact in media. So I've been thinking about that, and consulting checks that box. I'd also be thinking about being set up for success, and by that I mean thinking about an industry that's actually really going to invest in you as people. And it's that whole riff that I was talking about of how we basically invest in upward feedback and downward feedbacks and sideward feedbacks and formal training and informal training. We're doing that to set you up to be successful. This is a leverage business, which means that basically my life gets easier when the person underneath me is able to do my job, and their job gets easier when the person underneath. And so we're always trying to push that work down, as you know. Geoff doesn't spend any time with you, so and you're off running by yourself. But basically that's by design. It's really by design. And obviously you would not be running by yourself if Geoff didn't feel comfortable that you could run by yourself and he gave you enough and you felt set up to be successful. That's what this industry is about. We're not setting up people to sort of fail, because if you fail as an individual, the team fails. And the team's only as good as the weakest unit, and so we have to really invest and set it. So look for industries and also firms that are really going to invest in you. Develop your network. Well, your network basically starts internally. You're part of that team. You'll build relationships with the people that you train with, your entry classes, and you'll go through the firm. You'll build relationships with clients, and so you start, again, building out a network that, at some point will be, will serve you well, depending whether you stay in consulting or not. Some of my best relationships I founded when I was 25 years old. That was 3 or 4 years ago. But and they've been with me through all steps of my career. And then lastly, think about consulting not just as is this a stepping stone to your future career? So what are those skills that you learn along the way that can basically either if you decide to stay in that first page and go right through, or what does this teach you to do in other careers and also be a launching pad? So I mentioned it's an apprenticeship business. It really is an apprenticeship business. And the apprenticeship, and by that I mean, you apprentice under Geoff. Geoff apprentices under somebody else. That somebody else apprentices under somebody else. And at the end of the day, I apprentice under. I've been in this business 24 years. I still feel I'm an apprentice. I feel, Kevin, I don't know if you feel, you're always learning. You always feel that basically you're going to learn from somebody. And so you learn through this process of apprenticeship. We probably have, as an industry, world-class training. I think we, relative to say, my wife was an investment banker and she used to laugh at all the things that we did because we invest so much into people and we review people and we send them to training, and then we send, as soon as you come back from training, you're teed up for another training. And so the combination of apprenticeship learning, with world-class training is a very foundational part of our industry. And then lastly, it's a personalized career. Now you don't get to personalize your career in day one, but everybody on this table is in the process of personalizing the career. They've decided maybe what industries they want to focus on. They've decided maybe what sort of capabilities they want to work on eventually. It might be technology, it might be strategy, it might be government, it might be high-tech industries. But you start to build a career along the lines that you want it. And the nice thing about consulting is you can repop. I have many people that started off in one industry or one capability, and over time have become equally skilled in different industries and different capabilities. So that whole personalization is an important aspect of the consulting business. So I'll just go. Yeah. So if you think about a regular job, you go and you learn one particular thing. You end up in a consulting firm. You could end up working, and we've talked about healthcare, we've talked about consumer products, financial services, retail, tech. So you get exposed to different industries. You get exposed to different problem sets. That could be corporate growth, it could be M&A, it could be technology, it could be performance improvement, it could be IT. So you learn different capabilities. So you're not. You get to learn about IT without being a member of the IT department of General Electric or something. You get that lens. You also get to work with large companies, middle market companies, smaller companies. So you've got your client base will often span the spectrum of business sizes, and you get basically a set of skills, whether that's a general management perspective, how entrepreneurs think, how to problem solve, how to basically collaborate, how to manage people. So if you think about a normal career, like take not to belittle accounting or something, but you're an accountant, you work for a big firm, you'll learn to be a really good auditor. And then you might branch out from. We start with a very broad lens. We start exposing you to industries, exposing you to different client sizes, exposing you to different types of problems. So just think about that, play that forward in these sort of 3 or 4 month chunks, and just how much you would learn over a 2 to 3 year period. And we've talked about traditional companies, I think investors. So let's. Geoff, like if you think about your consulting career and the types of companies that you have served, what have been some of those? You don't have to name them, obviously, but just the types of businesses. That
Yeah,
you're in.
absolutely. So when we started out, I said I serve pharma and med device companies, and so now I serve a large diversified one in New Jersey. I serve a very large Japanese pharma company and have for 3 years or so. My first 2 years was a wide range. I served insurance companies. I served at least one company on this page that we're looking at. I served media companies.
So did we.
Yeah, I served the United States Treasury Department, consistent with the pitch of getting an opportunity to do a huge different variety in the first couple of years, and then slowly personalizing to Sean's point.
And tell me a little bit about why you decided to get into consulting postgraduate school. You obviously had done some interesting stuff at Microsoft and different places, and then you went to graduate school and you made the decision to get into consulting. What was your thought process? I guess is this is a place to restart your career, maybe, given that you started your career somewhere else at Bartley.
Yeah, absolutely. So I could sort of give you the answer of what I was thinking about when I joined McKinsey, and then I can give you the story I will tell now about why it's important. I think it reflects how little I think understood the industry before I joined it. So why did I join? I sort of like to say that it was an opportunity to punt on the question of what I wanted to do with my life. I'd worked in tech for a while, felt a little bit like my growth and development was slowing. I was reasonably sure that I would have more opportunities at the end of 2 years in consulting than I would have at the beginning of 2 years of consulting. I thought working in a bunch of different industries across a couple of years would be valuable and help with that. That's why I joined. Now, looking back, it's really clear to me that the skills and the capabilities that we spend our entire day trying to develop in our colleagues, to Sean's points about training and development, are immensely valuable in almost any organization where you could work. How do you use data to support an answer? How do you counsel a senior person about the way that you think is right? Whether you're working in government, whether you're serving a nonprofit in your community, whatever, those skills I think are very valuable. I didn't understand that as well before I joined, but if I had to make the case backward looking, that's what I would say.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that wanted for 23 years. Eventually I'll figure out what I want to do when I grow up. Kevin, tell us a little bit about why you've stayed in consulting for so long.
So I started a similar story. I started consulting to kind of get a broad perspective. I was on a 2-year program in my mind. and I've been there 18 years. So either I'm very slow at making a decision, or I actually enjoyed what I was doing. It was more the latter. I actually found the challenge in consulting was very different with every project that I worked on. You kind of get thrown into the fire from the beginning. You're picking up new skills, you're learning different things, you're taking on more responsibility. And after a couple of years and moving up within Booz Allen, it was something I liked and something I enjoyed doing, and it fit with my personal goals. So I've been there 18 years, and every year, I think one of the things that Sean said that stood out to me is, there's an apprenticeship model. And I get to work with people who are very bright people. There's always someone I can learn from in the field. And so that continues to kind of enrich what I'm doing daily. And I enjoy that apprenticeship model and being an apprentice for somebody else. But very, very satisfying.
And James and Kathleen, James, like you're relative, you made this decision relatively recently, at least relative to me. What was your thought process as to why to start your career in consulting?
Yeah, so both of you really touched on it. Primarily a broad range of industries, and I knew that the projects would differ so much that it would just give me a very wide array of skills moving forward with tremendous opportunities to grow. With that though, looking back, I would say I've been in a role a lot longer than I expected, and with that, it's come with a lot larger responsibilities, like managing an offshore team that I meet every night with, and just owning meetings with the client, things you'd never even expect to do coming in only a year. Yeah, so that's how it's changed.
Kathleen?
Similar. I wasn't quite sure exactly what I wanted to do. I was a biology major here, originally thinking of pursuing med school, and then I realized I didn't necessarily want to be on the clinical side of healthcare. So I did SBI, gave me some exposure to the business side. I had an internship at a bank, which was a great experience, and it helped me to realize that's not necessarily what I wanted to do because I still had that interest in healthcare. And FTI recruits very heavily from Villanova. I want to say we have 10 to 15 new people every year that join our group. And so I met some people from FTI. They let me know that they have a health solutions team. And so I decided to go for it. And it's been really great because even within healthcare, I'm still trying to figure out what I like best. Within my first 2 years, I've worked with pharmaceutical companies, medical device companies, most recently hospital systems, and after it really clicked for me, I realized I like this a lot. I want to keep going with the performance improvement projects with these hospital systems, and it's been a great experience because I'm constantly learning something new, always meeting new clients, and I'm never bored, so that's always good. You're traveling, you're up and about, so I definitely see myself here for a few more years, and then we'll see where it takes me.
And Gary, you were an investment banker, and then not consultant. What are like maybe 2 or 3 things that if you sort of compare and contrast us, given that there's a lot of people in the room probably are thinking about both of those as potential career paths?
Yeah, so Nova's got a great franchise and pipeline to financial services, right? We got great pipeline to the big 4 accounting firms, good to the big bulge bracket banks. And so when I was here in 2007 to 2008, finance was awesome, and the whole market just completely blew up. Like before my first day, I had to switch groups because my old group bought a bunch of stuff I shouldn't have bought, which was really cool. But I was lucky enough to last 4 years through it, and it was a great experience. And where you're at right now, I see a lot of fresh faces, right? Like you need to build a strong foundation for the rest of your career. You need to challenge yourself early on and learn a bunch of different things. Learn how to solve problems, figure out what industries excite you, figure out what kind of people you like working with. And banking was a great way for me to figure out all of those things. I learned a lot and would have changed my experience for the world. I think it's a great place to start your career. But as I look at the ACs, the Young Associate Consultants, right at 100, I wish I could go back to being an AC because the optionality you have out of that position is tremendous. You can do anything out of consulting, which is the coolest thing because I didn't know. I still don't know. what I want to be when I grow up. I'm 30 years old, I'm a midlife crisis. I don't know what industry to excites me. You see a lot, and you work on really hard problems within those industries. And so you can go into a private equity firm after 2 years working as an associate, or working as a business analyst. You can go work for a startup. You go to business school, hit the reset button, which is what I did, and switch careers, and then figure out the next step is. So I challenge you guys, like, as you're thinking about your career, the most important thing for you is probably just to find a place where you're going to feel challenged, where you're going to work with people you like working with, and just build optionality, because you're going to be 22 years old, right? Why would committing yourself to one thing forever, probably an unlikely scenario. You're going to switch careers over time. I think being a consultant and working with all these different industries, healthcare, tech, government, so be it. You're developing skill sets to be a core problem solver. And so that's key. You can bring that skill set in. I feel like I can go to any one of those companies on the board right now, insert myself into a strategy group, and add a ton of value right off of that. And so that's pretty much what I was trying to do.
So just on the optionality point, and I think everybody in this table would have stories, but I wanted to just personalize this because these three guys at one point actually worked on, they were doing client work underneath on one of my teams. But so Andy and Geoff basically founded Harry's. I don't know if people are familiar with Harry's. It's sort of mail order razor blades. It's like Dollar Shave Club. I think Dollar Shave Club was bought for $1 billion, so the money valuation on Harry's right now is probably fairly sizable. Geoff, this is his second company. He founded Warby Parker before this, which is the mail order eyeglasses. So you got a little bit of theme. He basically was an AC, and true story was that he was just pissed off that it cost so much to get his glasses, and then he said there's got to be a better way of doing this, and so he basically took the skills that he learned as an AC and applied it to building Warby Parker. And then it was basically the same story. He went into Walgreens and said, man, these razor blades are really expensive and they're really hard to get to, and now they even lock them up, so they're even harder to get to than they used to be. And so he basically disintermediated that business with Harry's. And so that's a great sort of that's optionality. Create your own business. You learn these foundational skills. Adam, a different story. Adam Braun he's out saving the world. So Adam created a foundation called the Promise of a Pencil. Basically started when he was took 6 months out from Bain, went over. He was at India, and obviously a very impoverished part of New Delhi. Kid comes up and asks him for some money. He doesn't have any money. He says, what can I give you? He goes, give me a pencil. And so you give him a pencil. And that basically now has turned into 330 schools. It's turned into educating 35,000 kids in developing countries. He actually was the UN Special Envoy to Education with Kofi Annan last year. He's just started a new foundation called Mission U, I think, which is all about basically improving sort of getting to tertiary education in America. And so he's decided to take those skills that he learned as an AC or as an entry-level consultant and apply it to that world. The funny thing about Adam is he's actually only the second most successful person in his family, because his brother actually is Justin Bieber's agent and started 2 record companies, and there's a whole bunch of stuff, I think, that make Adam feel like he's doing nothing. So anyway, the point is, and I'm sure Geoff has 100 stories, and this is an environment where you can apply these skills to fantastic pursuits if you happen to opt out of consulting. And those could be corporate jobs, it could be startups, it could be foundations. It teaches you how to think, it teaches you how to prioritize, it teaches you how to problem solve, it teaches you how to communicate. Those are skills that you can do anything with. And so I think if there's one reason to think about consulting as a career, I would use the word optionality. Because I don't think people. I think the roads that gives you, and one of those roads could be I'll stay in consulting forever. And there are 50 other roads that you could take from that. But that skill set that you learn is just worth its weight in gold. So now that you're all sort of energized, but I want to be one of those guys and start a $1 billion company and get some of these skills inside consulting firms and and go and do my thing or stay here for life. What can you do to prepare? And so a couple of things, and then I'll have the panel just close with a piece of advice to all of you. But if you think about it, what we're looking for, and we've talked about this, at the end of the day, we're looking for smart people. So how do we figure out smart people? We look at academic records. So some form of academic achievement that basically shows that you are you're a smart thinker. We also want people that are innate problem solvers, people that are always sort of saying like, why does this work, or why doesn't it work this way, or how could that be made better? That's different. That's necessary. That's related to smartness, but it's a different skill. Demonstrated leadership. We want people that can lead. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that you've got to be sort of the captain of the football. There's many forms of leadership. We look at leadership in a very broad definition of the word. You need to be a strong communicator, and most importantly, you need to be able to play on a team. And so, our interview process, our preparation process, is all about trying to sort of figure out, where you rank and stack up on these dimensions or dimensions that are very close to this. We do that primarily through a case interview. And a case interview is not like a regular interview. You don't walk in and we don't ask you, where did you come from, and tell me about this. That's all a little piece of it, but in that interview there is a business problem. And what we're trying to do is they're representative of the types of business problems our clients face. We're trying to really see how you think and problem solve. It's not really about getting the right answer. It's about it's trying to uncover your thought process to get to an answer. And it actually should be fun and engaging. It shouldn't feel like an interrogation. It shouldn't. Sometimes it does, but it should. It shouldn't. Examples would be, a question could be, television manufacturers losing market share in its biggest product line. How can you reverse that trend? We want people to engage in that, that discussion, ask for data, get data. Think about a framework, and it's. What we're looking for, as I said, is the approach you take, how analytical and creative you are, how you use data, how you communicate, how you think about implementing. Are you pragmatic? So it's not about the mistake a lot of people make is like, I've got to get to a very specific answer. Now you can't be like wildly off base, but what we're really looking for is the process that you undertake to get to an answer. So tips for case interviews. Make it about a business. This is where the interview changes. It's as much about dialogue as it is interviewer asks you a question, you respond. Drive to an answer. It's the thought process, to get to an answer that we're really looking for. Be pragmatic. Demonstrate your communication and people skills in that structure. Some people sort of forget that they're actually in an interview and they sort of lose how they communicate. Listen. The interviewer will actually be providing you direction. The number of times that I've sat across the table from candidates and I've given them some information and they've not taken that as direction. Don't force fit frameworks. People go out and they find ways of doing things and they're trying to sort of force fit that framework. You need a framework, but it's very easy to tell when you're force fitting a framework just because you happen to memorize it of something. And to a certain extent expect math, but this is computation, it's not calculus. It's like we want people to sort of be able to logically keep numbers in their heads sometimes and process and execute. But the reality is there's no substitute for practice, and we've been talking with various folks in Villanova how to accelerate that process, which is a good thing. So, Geoff, if you were to sort of big audience here, but what piece of advice would you give to everybody in this room in terms of maybe how to think about this and how to prepare?
Yeah, understood. So actually, it would be interesting to see how many people in the room have done a case interview. Okay, so let's say 5% of the room. Sean makes the point that ultimately we're looking for smart people, good problem solvers, and then we use the case interview as a way to do it. And you sort of can walk into a case interview as, I think, a smart person and a good problem solver and do reasonably well. Some people seem to knock it out of the park, but I think that there is an enormous element of practice that goes into sharpening your problem solving, knowing exactly how these things go, sort of knowing the way to structure the communication and whatnot. So, you should get, the goal should be to practice over and over and over again for these things and preparing for an actual interview, getting feedback on how you're doing, improving, etc. So that sort of we get to in a discussion when you're actually thinking about applying, 95% of the people in the room can raise their hand and say, I've done 10 as practice. For me, when I was interviewing, there was probably a 6-week period where it was my overwhelming priority. Basically, when all my classes, I forgot about them for 6 weeks and practiced together. Some people walk in and nail it with zero prep. Sort of on Thursday, somebody says, do you want to interview McKinsey, and Friday they get an offer. But that wasn't my experience.
James, any words of wisdom in terms of preparing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, plug for VCG, of course, but it's an awesome opportunity to just learn more about the society. And as consulting offerings increase in Villanova, make the most of them. I know that they're trying to offer consulting classes right now, and even just curriculum like business analytics, strategic classes, things like that, that are really going to build your skill sets and make you more of an attractive candidate are also very important. I'd also read a ton online about the differences between the firms, certain idiosyncrasies that you could comment about in the interview that really appeal to you. I know Deloitte, of course, has different charities that we work with than, let's say, Bain, for example. And that may be something that really appeals to you for more of the emotional side of making this decision in your job interview. So.
Kevin, any parting thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of building on that, I think the communication is probably one of the key things to keep in mind as you're going through the process. When we have case studies or things that we do at work, we have a lot of smart people, but the ones that really stand out are the ones that can take that problem, turn it into a story that leads the person on the other side of the table from start to finish. So the ability to kind of communicate and think through every step of the way, have I covered everything in the middle so I get to a final story, a final answer, so that the person on the other side of the table actually has kind of made that journey with you and there's no missing. I think that's one of the things I see a lot, is that the ability to tell that story is very key.
Pete is probably the guy that's been through this process the most recently. Any thoughts for the group, given that you did this for your summer and now you're full-time?
Yeah, sure. So I would say that that practice thing, that's what it comes down to, really. And it's at multiple stages, right? So coming from Villanova, we're still trying to establish this consulting presence. A big hurdle that you'll face just in trying to pursue a career in consulting is getting that first interview. And they're hard to get. So what it comes down to is practice even for that. So you get ready for these phone calls that you're going to have with, Sean at Bain for 5 minutes, and you need to knock him out of the park. You need to wow him and be like, I need an interview here, and it's in your advantage to give me an interview here. You need to convince them, so you need to be prepared for that. And I guess I started that process in about July of my sophomore summer while I was interning up in Boston. And then tried to set up a lot of networking opportunities in August or September. So I was kind of traveling around a lot and talking to folks, a lot of individuals in consulting, to get my name out there and try to get an interview. And I mean, shameless plug here, everyone's lined up here. So there's no traveling, there's no phone calls, it's just outside. So I would take advantage of the networking session after this. Beyond that, once you get the interview, it really comes down to practice again. The case prep practice, I probably started that in August for January, February interviews. That began with attending training sessions and reading books, and then kind of peaking over winter break with doing a case a day, I'd say, almost, just to get really ready for that. And some of the people right here on this board were willing to do cases with you, so the resources are there. We're doing everything we can to help you get ready to succeed in an interview, but if
just coming down to practice. So I can't stress that enough.
And I think the point of just time, like this is not, these are not interviews that, you wake up on Wednesday, got an interview and you walk right in. It's like sort of standardized tests. You need to figure out what the pieces of it are. You usually don't go in cold, and so you cannot prepare probably early enough, and you cannot prepare probably too much. And so, just parting thoughts, I guess. 5 things. One is this is a great first step to take in your professional life. I think we're trying to communicate that this opens up way more doors than it ever closes. This creates a set of skills that you can apply in many different settings. No matter what you choose to do. It's a career where you're continually learning. I've been in this business 24 years, and I feel that every single week I am learning from somebody, and that somebody is often not older than me. That somebody is often, a 22-year-old right off campus who has figured out a different way of doing something because they think differently than that. And so, that learning is not a hierarchical process. You learn every single day in this business, and you'll learn from a variety of different people. It's a career that challenges you every day. There are days that you're going like, this is just impossible to solve. And there are days that you might have the solution and the client doesn't want to move fast enough with you, or you can't get the client to sort of, really think through the change that is required. And so, there's a challenge. It's an incredible career if you stay for life, like I basically have done. And hopefully you see it's an amazing launching pad if you choose to pursue other passions. So I think, when I think about entry-level, post-undergrad careers, this is as rich an experience as you can probably get. Because it really does provide that one word of optionality, and it is a great experience. So I think we're heading to network.
Yeah, so just before we head out, a huge thank you to Sean and all the panelists. This was great.